Welcome to Triangle BNI. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. We talk every week about the loud and crowded digital world and where everybody needs help because it's changing every day. So you need professionals like Drago and his team at Oak City Tech to help you navigate those worlds and get to your current and future clients so you can tell them how you can help them grow their business. So when you need help from professionals, go to oakcitytech.com, tell them what you're looking for. I know they'll be able to help you. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Every week on Triangle BNI, we bring you local small business success stories. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Each week, about 35 chapters and about 520 people get together, and our sole mission is to help each other grow our businesses. And our small business success story today is Alexandra Anderson, owner of Anderson Legal. Alexandra is also in RD48. Their name is Next Level BNI. They meet Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. Right now it's on Zoom, but if you want to meet some serious connectors in Cary, this is a group you want to join. Alex, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today, Mike.
Happy to have you. I always wait to find out what I'm going to learn before the show because I do professionally stalk, and because you're a lawyer, I will use the word professionally because I want to know stuff, right? So I can ask questions.
Sure.
And what we found out this morning is your family just moved. So how much fun was
Just
that?
moved. It was crazy. I think, my husband and I, we moved a lot in our younger, as children. We moved once we were a couple, and I have to say, this was the toughest one so far.
Now, Alex is sitting in a room with nothing on the wall, barely anything in the room, just waiting to be designed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And
It's going to be my new hobby now.
is that your office you are sitting in?
It is.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the very office that the house purchase was centered around.
Oh, really? How
Yeah.
come?
Well, we needed it to be large enough to fit me comfortably, fit all my documents comfortably, and then some of my employees when they come over to work. So, and it's hard to find one that can do all that.
There you go. All right. So Alex is a litigator. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I always like having people on the show that I learn something from because I know what I do, and I just like meeting people that do things or from places that I've never been from. So, Alex, we've known each other, what are we going on, like 4 months maybe now, 5 months,
Something like
kind of through
that. Yeah,
BNI?
sounds about right. Yep.
And so if you'll put her name back up there. So if you look at the spelling of Alex's name, it is not a typo. I actually spelled it right. We put it up on the screen. So tell me about your heritage and why your name is spelled Alek, Sandra.
Sure, yeah. So I was actually born in Poland, and my family goes back a number of generations in Poland. And in Polish, actually, there is no letter X, but the word Alexandra or the name Alexandra is, it's probably just as popular as it is here. So whenever there's that X sound, they substitute that with a KS. And so my first name is very Polish and spelled in the Polish way.
And the number of people that have butchered that name are countless, right?
I mean, I would say 100% of I would say 100% of non-Polish speakers, but I think I've actually come across a few Polish speakers that were so confused by it that they butchered it too.
And so people want to spell it Alex, Andra, right?
That's correct. And
Right.
then when I tell them it's a little different, they start adding a C and another X. And so we get all sorts of combinations.
And when you were in school, the first day of class, when the teacher would always, go down the roll call, and did they pause for a second thinking it was given
Yes.
to them as a typo?
Yes. There was always a pause and go, It's me. I'm here. I'm here. And then, basketball season, be like, you, um, come on.
Yeah. Number 12, you're in.
Yeah.
All
Yep.
right, so let me see if I can pronounce your given name correctly.
Okay.
And I'm going to be wrong, but I'm going to give
Mhm.
it a shot. Alexandra, is it middle name is Elsbieta?
Yes, that's
Okay.
very good. Yeah. Yep.
So it's Alexandra Elsbieta Kozlowska.
That's right. Yeah.
Man, when was the
You got
first
it.
time you had to write all that out?
I think it was probably around the second grade where I started spelling it correctly. It took some time.
Now, where do the first and the middle names come from?
So the first name is, there isn't much of a story behind it. It's just something that the family liked. The middle name is actually my mother's first name, as well as my grandmother's on my father's side first name. So they decided to stick around with the Elżbieta, which it's the Polish version of Elizabeth.
Okay, is that standard in that heritage to give a child a mother or father's first name or middle name or something like that?
It's not. It's just I think it's a family quirk because my dad had the Elżbietas on both sides, his wife and his mother, and so he decided to really surround himself with that one.
And your father's first name is what?
Tomasz.
Spell that.
Tomaszz.
Thomas, right? In our
Yes,
world? Okay.
that's
All right.
right. Yep.
Okay.
And that is actually my son's middle name too.
Oh, cool.
Hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
What things from that heritage did you bring to Carrie and your marriage?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I would say that my husband's much calmer than I am. I'm kind of the fiery Polish
Good.
lady.
He married that, but he knew going into it that that
He
was a
knew what he
plus.
was going and getting into. I mean, I need to point that out more
Yeah.
often to him.
Yes.
I think that our Christmas traditions are pretty unique. We do Christmas on Christmas Eve.
Ah,
And
okay.
it's a 12 dish feast
Ooh,
that is, I
ooh.
think the best way to describe it is pescatarian. There's a lot of
Okay.
fish.
All right.
Um, and generally speaking, presents are opened on New Year's Eve. And then Christmas is just kind of a free for all day. And so we've kind of incorporated a lot of that into my husband's and my new family.
Mm,
So we're doing the 12 dish meal.
mm,
And then we are going to hold out for Santa Claus for Christmas
mm.
Day in the American tradition, is what we say.
That is more European, isn't it? Christmas Eve.
It is, yes, and I'm not sure that it's all European countries, but I think that Christmas Eve seems to be a more major holiday there than it is here.
How much family do you still have back in Poland?
So my two grandmothers are in Poland, and I think I have some distant family, but my two grandmothers are really the two that I know. Also have family in France, England, and Detroit.
Those those cities just roll together, don't they?
Yeah,
Countries, states, they all roll
absolutely.
together. Yeah. So,
Yes.
is it Oma and Opa in Polish as well?
It's actually babcia and Jaja. And
I okay.
yep, yep.
I did know the grandfather because I've got the guy my mom dated for a long time is from his family is from Poland, and his
Mhm.
grandson calls him Jadek.
Yep, yep.
Got it.
So you
Okay.
can you can say Jadek or you can say Jaja.
Gotcha. Okay. All
Yep.
right. Wonderful. All right. So Alex is a litigator with Anderson Legal. All right. So what we know of litigators are, oh, just we watch TV and we know exactly what your job and world is like. Are those even close?
No, absolutely
Oh,
not. At least
good.
not in the state of North Carolina.
So your role, your areas of focus, if I've got these right, there's a number of things, but commercial and construction litigator,
That's
issues
correct.
along
Yep.
those
Mhm.
lines?
Yep, and
Uh,
also real estate is a pretty big one these days.
okay.
Litigation.
Yeah, yeah. So, wow, where do we start with that one, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
so where did all this come from? Legal world,
So
litigator?
we can go back to the dinosaur ages when I decided that I wanted to go to law school to do criminal law, specifically criminal defense, because I did not think that the legal system was set up very well. So I went in very idealistic and wanted to change the criminal justice system. And somewhere in law school, I realized that that was probably actually not a good use of my time because many have tried. And we've got one life to live, and I wanted it to be a little bit more balanced than trying to change an entire system. um, and I actually ended up taking a class called construction law, and it was probably my favorite class and kind of led with that when I was looking for jobs straight out of school. And my first job was at a law firm that exclusively did construction litigation. I stayed there for a year, and then that job was in Winston-Salem, and moved back to Raleigh, where I joined another firm that did construction litigation, along with the other fields of commercial litigation and real estate litigation. And what I really loved about the combination of the three is that there is sort of a legal philosophy common thread amongst them, but there's always something new to learn, something new to figure out. And so that kind of keeps me on my toes.
We as regular civilians who probably I think there's way more people that don't ever end up in trouble or needing we always need lawyers for different things that we talked earlier, paperwork, documents, things like that. But as far as going to court, so if there's an inkling of trouble one day, be it whatever it is, what are kind of the first couple things we need to think about or do?
So don't talk to the police without talking to your lawyer first. That's number one. Number two is, especially in civil cases, but criminal cases just as well, deadlines are very, very important. If you get something in the mail that could have the slightest legal implication, quickly check for the deadline and put it in your calendar, put up all the required ticklers, and then talk to a lawyer, because missing a deadline can really lose you in a matter that might not be a big deal if you get it figured out timely. So tracking those deadlines is very important. Also, if a document arrives from the sheriff's office, if a document arrives in the mail with a green card, a FedEx or a UPS, open those quickly and figure out what it is, because if it is a lawsuit, the time's already ticking.
And we, first of all, for those of us with older parents, the IRS never calls you to dispute something. So
That's
don't ever
correct.
take a phone call from the IRS because it's not them. They are all paperwork.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
But so let's say somebody gets something in the mail one day that says, "Hey, this is happening to you or could happen to you." So they call a lawyer, they're gonna get a complimentary meeting with you or however you call that just to see if there's a reason to work with you or another lawyer?
Yeah, in my case, most of my meetings are complimentary unless there's a substantial amount of documents to figure out, where it'll take maybe more than an hour. But that first hour is complimentary.
Mm.
Not all lawyers do it that way, but I like to give individuals the benefit of the doubt to give us time, whether to figure out, is there a problem? Is it a problem that I can fix? And do I and the other side mesh well, and we'll work together well?
Should they ask that question when they call a legal firm saying, "Hey, I think I might be in trouble?"
Absolutely. And I think, you need to ask right up front, whatever is your priority as far as what you expect from your attorney. You want to put that priority in front of them as soon as possible.
We are here with Alexandra Anderson, owner of Anderson Legal. Alex is also part of RD 48. They meet Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. She is the past president, which makes every past president smile because it's a full year being president, but a good year. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. We talk a lot about who owns what. Glad to have a lawyer on today. You don't own your Facebook group and page. You don't own your YouTube channel. You don't own Instagram. You don't own anything because they can shut you down in a second if they want to, but you do own all the information, all the email addresses you have. You want to start a newsletter, a campaign like that. So folks like the pros at Oak City Tech can help you do that and keep you current, keep you in front of your future clients so you can grow your business. Go to oakcitytech.com, tell them what you're looking for. I know they'll be able to help you. All right, Alex, one of my favorite things to watch is people that incriminate themselves on Facebook and Instagram because they're like, oh, I know I said I threw my back out and I can't work anymore, but here I am water skiing on vacation, folks. I'm having a blast. It's like, come on, people, you got to think this through a little better. I'm sure
Yeah.
you see some of that, right?
Yeah, so I have to say my line of work doesn't
Mm.
necessarily I don't do personal injury. So we don't have the ski accidents that are faked, but I have come across certain individuals where I was wondering, what are you thinking trying to convince me
Yeah.
otherwise? I would remember there was a gentleman in a banking litigation that I was involved in, and I was representing the bank, and he was a lender who had sued the bank, claiming that the bank had defrauded him, was wrongly foreclosing on his house. And one of his arguments was that the bank never sent him any bank statements. He didn't know how much he owed. He didn't know when his payments were due and how much he's supposed to pay. And so one thing that very quickly popped into my head was, well, nowadays he had to have a sign in or a login for his bank information. And so during the deposition, I let him get pretty comfortable with the story that he was telling, and I let myself buy the story, and I somehow sneaked it in as to, well, what about online? Were you able to see it? And he started saying how, yeah, I would sign in all the time. And bam, there it is. You knew how much you had to pay and when you had to pay it. So it's certainly not as exciting as the skier who then goes to run a marathon. But for me, it was certainly
Oh, yeah.
a victory.
Now, when you and your husband are having, family decision conversations, kids, moving, marriage, all that good stuff, does he know when he's being lawyered?
He does not, and it usually comes back later on. And it usually comes up in we were having a conversation, and 3 days later I set out the bullet point of what he said
Mm,
3 days ago, and
yeah.
now is not making any sense and is being inconsistent. So which one is true, Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
So he does not enjoy being lawyered. I can tell you that
Yeah,
much.
yeah, we we have enough trouble when we're married to non-lawyers, then we throw the legal part in, and we're pretty much done, so,
Mhm. This
sometimes
is
w a as I tell your kind, my kind, sometimes not real bright, but we're a lot of fun. We really are. We
I
are.
mean,
Yeah.
fun is the essence of
Yeah,
life.
and we're predictable, so don't be surprised when we do the same thing every time in the same situation. Alright, so as a litigator, how many of what percentage of your cases end up in court?
Well, so a large percentage, I would probably say 90%, some sort of litigation started. Complaint is filed. an answer may be filed. But if we are talking about how many cases go to trial, which is what a lot of people think of when they watch the TV shows of, witnesses being called up and a jury being seated, that is extremely small. I used to say 10%, but now I would say even less than 10%.
Wow.
Um, an overwhelming majority are either settled. The court system in North Carolina, if you are in Superior Court, which is disputes over $25,000, it requires you to go through a mediation process. And so some cases settle prior to that, and some cases settle during the mediation. The other thing that's available is motions practice. So the case can actually be resolved based on the documents and responses and admissions that the parties have made. And that speeds things along. And to be perfectly frank, as fun as it would be to try a case with witnesses, I think that going to trial is not a good thing for any client. Trial is extremely expensive. I think in most cases, you'll probably rack up just as much as you had throughout the whole case, if not more, just for the trial portion. And also, it's very unpredictable, especially with a jury. There's all sorts of science as to how to pick a jury, but the takeaway is always it's a crapshoot with your jury and what they'll do and whether or not they'll care. That's really the question of, are they here just to make a decision and leave? Or are they interested in the case? And I think that when it comes to a criminal matter, more people feel compelled to take the time to look at the situation. It's hard to get juries emotional and caring about civil matters that involve two businesses. And so I always try to make my clients aware, trial's a risk.
Do you remember the first trial case you had with witnesses and a jury?
I do not. It's all kind of meshed together right now. But I can tell you that every trial, I've never jumped off a waterfall, but it sort of feels like you're about to do that when it's getting started, and it's exciting and it's fantastic. But it's certainly um, trying in ways than one.
Because you have a number of clients, if all of a sudden one of them, for whatever reason, does go to trial, does that change your week and your month because more hours are gonna be expended towards that case and that client?
Absolutely. And, trial doesn't pop up as a surprise. Trial is usually set a number of months beforehand. And usually the surprise is when the case settles right before trial. That happens often. But I can't say that I have very predictable days, especially when there's new developments in cases where, opposing counsel may serve a document that is somewhat of a surprise. Now we have to get back to researching it, figuring out how to pivot our case strategy. And a lot of times, I'm a small business, so I have to have a steady stream of new clients coming in. And more often than not, a new client means a surprise hearing because initially they thought they could handle it on their own, and now that it's on for hearing, they need help and they don't want to go to court on their own. And so a lot of times, new cases really do um, strain my schedule.
We know or we assume the big law firms have 17 of these types and 12 of these types and 9 doing this. What does Anderson Legal have? What's your legal team like?
So my legal team is I have an assistant, Joanne. She is absolutely fabulous. I could not have asked for a better assistant. She's been in the business for about, I think it's 40 years now. So she knows what she's doing. And we actually met at my previous law firm where she was my assistant there. And we recently added Johnny Payne to our team. And Johnny is a new attorney, and he is the first associate that Anderson Legal added. He is working very hard and getting some good lawyering done. So I'm really looking forward to working with Johnny. And that is it for now. But I do expect to be hiring probably in second quarter of next year.
Very nice. Do you at any point in time hope a case goes to trial?
I do. Yes. And I get very involved in my cases on an emotional level, an intellectual level. I spend a lot of time. And generally speaking, if my client has been wronged and the other side is being completely unreasonable or has a propensity to stray from the truth, I very much want it to be heard by the courts.
Do you have a sense at any point in time during the discovery or from the time the client comes to you that this is a winnable case and it will probably be settled and that's good for everybody?
Yes, yes. Generally speaking, when a client first comes to me, I can develop an inkling as to how this is going to go. When it's going to settle, at what point is this trial going to happen? At what point is the winning hearing going to happen? I don't know, but I usually can guess, oh, yeah, this one will settle. This one will be probably resolved on a motion. This one's going to be a factual issue. So trial's possible. But with all that being said, there's often developments during a case that change the trajectory of what we can expect. And so I always tell my clients, I can't guarantee anything. I'm actually ethically not allowed to guarantee anything. I can tell you what my gut tells me right now and what my experience tells me. But, at best, this is probably a 70% assurance of what I'm saying is what's going to happen.
When you have a client that you know is in the right or however you want to say that, what what card is usually played that forces the other hand to settle? Is there a commonality?
There is, many things can happen. And a lot of times, even when I start developing the strategy, I don't know what step 3, 4, and 5 of that strategy will be. We have a lot of tools. One is discovery. We have written discovery where we ask the other side questions. We ask them to produce certain documents. We ask them to admit certain facts. After that, we can also do some depositions. Every once in a while, if what the party is saying is just so far from the truth that no ethical lawyer should have brought the case, we start saying, can you reconsider what you're doing here? Because we might need to act on your misstatements before the court and pursue some sort of remedies with respect to the misrepresentations here. And all those combined with timing, we kind of try and, for lack of a better term, pressure the other side to show them we're gonna win here. um and you can take this as far as you want to, but you might just end up spending more in attorney's fees. So there's just a lot to that.
When you're in discovery, first of all, are they obligated, like in court when they swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, are they obligated in all those steps to be truthful and tell the truth?
Absolutely, yes. So when you don't have a attorney, when you sign a document, you are saying that everything that you said in that document, and then you're filing it with the court, that is the truth, or at least upon your information and belief, it is the truth. An attorney is actually an officer of the court. And so it is their obligation to make sure that the court has an understanding of what the truth is. So if your client is not telling the truth and you know they're not telling the truth, it's on you to correct that. Because otherwise you yourself might get into trouble. And so in North Carolina and actually in the federal system, we have what is known as the rules of civil procedure. And rule 11 is the one that says that that you're signing a document stating that it is true, and any document that is filed with the courts has to be signed and dated by the person filing it, showing that they are making these representations to the best of their knowledge.
And that's based on the information they have told that your client to that point has told you and you have found.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Now, when you are sitting across a table from your opposition and you're going through discovery and you know their client's just full of it. You know it. I mean, you've been doing this a while now, not forever yet, but a while. And you probably have a good well, first of all, you have a mom sense and a mom's
Mhm.
intuition just that trumps everything. But that being so, is there a lawyer wink and a nod like you ready to settle while his or her client's talking?
You know, there's always that phone call of, Joe, I've seen the documents. Your client said A, B, and C. This is just frivolous. It's got to go away. Have your client make a settlement offer and let's talk. That is kind of that is the phone call that either side can expect to get if we're getting to that point of come on.
Do you play poker by chance?
I do not.
Okay.
I actually think that I would be a horrible poker player. There's two versions of Alex. I hate to say it, I want to be the genuine self, and the at home with friends Alex is pretty lighthearted, and I can't keep a straight face, and so I don't think I would be a very good poker player. The the at work in the courtroom, talking to clients, talking to the other side, Alex is a little bit more serious, and I can probably keep a straight face a little bit better, but not a poker player, no.
At some point in time, I'm sure you've had a case or cases where both of you know you are right, and both of you, your heels are dug in, you're ready to go, and you're kind of not bluffing them because you believe you're right, but at some point in time, back to your earlier point, you're pressuring them to like, "Dude, come on. You're done, right?" Even though they may or may not be right.
Yeah, there's I wouldn't give percentages, but there's many cases where both sides have a very good faith argument as to why they're before the court and why they think they're going to win. And that's really what the court system is meant for, to be the decider of who's right. And inevitably, somebody's going to walk away unhappy. I hate to say it, it's usually both sides that walk away unhappy, because it's very rare that one side takes the whole pie. And I think that's something that I try and express to my clients going into a litigation, that, it's a stressful process. And even if you win, it doesn't always feel that way.
Probably because of the grind of it all.
Absolutely. Yes. By the time you get that order and that order becomes final, you've really had to jump through a lot of loops. you've probably been through depositions. You've had to review and re-review all your files that you have, and it all takes a toll. And not to mention attorney's fees.
Mm. Well, and we all know, I mean, your industry is just rife with myths. We know that. I mean, you probably, I'm sure that there's a class at law school. It's legal jokes 101, just so you can tell them before everybody else does, right?
It's funny. My old boss actually banned all lawyer jokes from the office because he couldn't stand them anymore. And every once in a while, I think some lawyers act in the stereotypical ambulance chaser manner, or take a case that they know is not, they shouldn't, but for the sake of making the money. But I think that there's more lawyers that really do things in the ethical manner and want to do well for their client. And I think we get a bad rap, but I don't think we're that bad of a group.
Agreed. And you're coming up on about 2.5 years or so as Anderson Legal.
That's
Do
correct.
do
Yes.
you build a profile on other lawyers you have or may come into contact with so you kinda know what their tells are?
I do. I do.
Good.
It's and it's funny because when my client comes in and is like, oh, they got a lawyer, or there's already a pending litigation and they're coming to me because they've already been sued. One of the first things that I do is, okay, let's see who signed this document, who's on the other side. And very often, they will, every lawyer has their own MO and will sort of do it that specific way. And, I can kind of tell what I can expect from them. That's for sure. And we're not allowed to judge shop, as in you can't schedule your hearings before a particular judge. But I also, there's certain judges that going before judge this and this, I can expect A, B, and C.
No, but that's good information to have. And on the show in the past, we've had a couple female financial advisors, and I asked them, it's like, okay, how many times do you get the look like, what does she know? Young female. I'm assuming you still get those looks, right?
Very much so. Unfortunately, it is not an easy industry for female attorneys. It's certainly getting better, but I think that the legal industry in itself is always sort of slow to progress. We're behind other industries, and that is also true with respect to equality, unfortunately.
I had a boss years ago when just you always try to get a nugget from each of your bosses you've worked for. And he great advice, and still to this day, we're talking about a particular issue one day, and he was going into a meeting and did not appear prepared. And used the word appeared prepared. He was,
Mhm.
but it
Mhm.
wasn't a legal issue because I'm not a lawyer or anything. But I just kind of asked him a question like, hey, this, and this. He goes, here's my tip to you, man. Always let him underestimate you. I'm like,
And
nice.
that's what I was just going to say,
Yep.
that sometimes it becomes a very good
Oh,
strategy.
yeah. Again, going
Yes.
back to my kind, were predictable. So if a 50-year-old my kind walks into court against you, I know what he's gonna say. I
Yep.
know what he's gonna do, and he's thinking like, "Oh, come on, really?" Yeah.
I have to say, I've gotten more than one phone call in just the past year from the other side after a hearing saying, "I didn't expect that."
Yeah. Yeah.
That really, well, nice work.
And it's everything in your body to keep from saying, "Thanks, dumbass,"
Exactly. Yep.
which he
Or,
would deserve.
it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Now, is it different going against a 20-year legal veteran, male or female?
Um, I want to say it definitely depends on the individual.
Okay.
That's unquestionable. And I have to say, it's very rare to go against a 25-year female veteran. There just were not as many females going to law school back then.
Mm.
So I want to say that's maybe happened to me twice in the last 2 years. There are a lot more females in the younger generations, though.
Oh, good. Okay. And what
Yes.
are you seeing the driving force behind why they got into this and kind of what they bring to the table in this older male dominated world?
The younger females.
Yep.
I think that, the legal industry has not done a good job of respecting the personal lives of lawyers. There's 2 a.m. emails and there's phone calls at just inappropriate times. And that became an industry standard. And I think that in the recent years, I would say in the last 5 years, there has been a little bit more of a push to say, lawyers are allowed to have families
Mhm.
and their personal time. It's okay for you not to answer the 9 p.m. phone call on Friday. You're not a bad lawyer if you do that. And so I think that there has been more of a push to make the industry a little bit more human friendly. And I actually think that in many situations, the interactions between lawyers when it comes to cases are a little bit less aggressive and more so, how can we come to a resolution here, as opposed to, well, what you're saying, stupid, and my client's gonna win.
See you in court, counselor. We always hear that on TV, right? When
Exactly.
in doubt. All right. So, one of my favorite parts of the show and my favorite question to ask people, your husband's name is Luke.
Yes.
How did you and Luke meet? And do you both tell the story the same way?
We certainly don't tell the story the same way. And I'm not going to even attempt to tell his side of the story. But we met on my first night in college in the basement of his frat house
At Emory or Carolina?
at Emory.
Okay.
Yes, at Emory. And what happened was that my roommate and we were, for lack of a better term, somewhat sheltered children. And so the freshmen were not allowed to go to frat row the first 2 weeks of school. And so we were like, all right, we're not going to go to frat row the first 2 weeks of school. Instead, we decided to watch Sex in the City, which both of our sets of parents said it was not okay to do at home. So that's how we were going to spend our night.
And that's what
Well,
college is for, isn't it?
exactly. I mean, get started with all the no-nos really early. So, about, it's around 8 p.m. and our entire hall has gone to frat row because they're not following this rule. And so, probably about 3 episodes into Sex and the City, we're like, okay, well, let's see what it's all about. Everybody went, maybe we won't get into so much trouble. So we get to frat row, and the first house on frat row just has really cool lights up. And we decide to go inside. Didn't really see how it was not a good idea to go into a random house, just the two girls. Nevertheless, we made that decision. And it was perfectly quiet. So we start walking around and we see a dorm room with a few guys hanging out. And we're like, hey, our name's Alex and Sarah. How are you guys? So then inviting us to their basement to play some beer pong and whatnot. So again, first day of college, really getting started with all the college activities there. And Luke was down there playing beer pong. We talked for a little bit, and then he friended me on Facebook the following day, and then we ended up not talking for the next 6 years. And I had on my Facebook that I was from Chapel Hill, and he had moved to this area for a job and was looking for people that he knew in the area and came across me on Facebook. And so that's how we ended up reconnecting.
Wow. You let him hang around for 6 years. All right.
For 6 years. And I have to say, every once in a while when he would post on Facebook, I would always be like, oh yeah, he seemed really nice.
Mhm.
There was he was always somewhere in the back of my mind.
Does he give a reason for the 6-year time
He
frame?
says he had a girlfriend. I don't know about that.
Mm, no, that wouldn't hold up in court, as we say, right?
Exactly.
Now, so where was the first actual date?
The first actual date was at Mosaic in downtown Raleigh. It's not there anymore, but it was right off of Glenwood at one point, and it was a wine bar. And so I drove there from Chapel Hill, got lost. I think I ended up being like 45 minutes late. Luckily, he was still there. Then we did dinner at Carolina, one of the iconic restaurants there, right next door. And about halfway through dinner, I'm like, this is probably one of the better first dates I've ever had. And so our next date lasted about 3 days. And that was in 2011.
All right. Now, you as a lawyer can appreciate the, intent of the don't go to frat row for 2 weeks. Like, really, what difference is that gonna make?
I mean, if it's don't go to frat row for 2 weeks, you're just gonna,
Yeah.
develop all the ideas that you probably wouldn't have in the time span, and then probably execute on those ideas when you can go to frat row. Though I understand the school taking some sort of measure to keep these silly freshmen alive.
Yeah. Yeah. But it also makes the assumption that they're gonna be so mature after day 15 that they're now capable of going to
Oh,
frat row, yeah.
absolutely. Yes, yes. And I would say, observing myself and probably my fellow friends, I think the maturity level actually dips at some point and then
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes back up. But there's a severe dip there, yes.
Well, and that's to assume that, again, my kind started with maturity. That's not happening either, so now did your what was your friend's name you went to the frat house with?
Sarah.
Sarah. Where is she today, and did she marry one of the brothers like you did?
She did not marry one of the brothers.
Okay.
She did have a crush on Luke and wanted to keep going back. And Luke
Oh.
would always not be there. So she did not marry one of the brothers. She did, however, marry somebody that she met in college 2 years later, and she is also a lawyer.
Oh,
And she
nice.
actually also practices commercial litigation.
Very nice.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
can you exclude her as that mythical girlfriend that Luke brings up?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
right, right.
Yes. She can be excluded.
Okay,
However, the identity of the individual, I have not even narrowed down yet.
because she doesn't exist.
That's my theory.
Now, real quick with your call, sometimes I know one meeting you missed because you were called to court.
That's
Uh,
correct.
how
Yes.
does that jive with, being a mom and having the structure of a family?
So that was That is a do as you go sort of situation. My son is in daycare, but unfortunately, sometimes daycare just it's not enough hours in the day for me to get everything done. So my husband definitely has to chime in a lot, and every once in a while, he's got to rearrange his schedule to accommodate.
But your husband, the smart husbands will play their wife trump card. I've had friends that, again, old school, right? Well, I don't want my wife making more money than me. I'm thinking, dude, you're an idiot. It's our account. If she's going to make 500,000, really, you're going to turn that down. Okay. Then, so it's interesting what trump cards husband can play because Luke can play a nice, don't mess here. My wife's a lawyer. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So he very much is of the theory that he's going to benefit from his wife's lawyering, and so he does a pretty good job at that. And I think his job knows that I'm a business owner and what I'm doing, and he's been there for some time. So I've sort of I could say grown up as a lawyer with his company, and a lot of people know that about me, and so they do give us a lot of grace.
Yeah. That gives, again, my kind to talk a little bit more trash to our kind when we're like, "Yeah, you don't wanna start anything because my wife's a lawyer." Aleks, this has been a blast. Love that world you're in just to understand all the moving parts and everything, and we thank you for sharing those stories today. Folks, if you have any issues that may crop up, call a lawyer, make sure you're covered. Certainly call Aleks, I would tell you that, otherwise wouldn't have her on the show. But also, A, she'll take good care of you, but B, you get a free 30 or 45 minutes with her and lawyers like her to understand what's there. Like she said earlier, is there something there? So take full advantage of that. Don't think, oh, hey, my Uncle Billy, he's really up on things like this, but he's not a lawyer. Uncle Billy's not going to take you where you need to go, probably. So find a professional. So, Aleks, we enjoyed it very much. Good luck with everything, and I'm sure we'll catch up on some stories later.
Thank you so much, Mike. Had a great time chatting with you, and thanks for hearing me out.
Yep. And if you'll hang on one second, folks, we'll see everybody next time on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.